Black man gave up. His dream for his kids. What they did. 25 years later, broke the internet. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days, drumming against the rusted tin roof of the rundown apartment in East Baltimore. Inside, the air smelled of wet wood and sorrow. Marcus Hayes sat on the floor next to a pile of unopened mail, most of it marked overdue or final notice. But his eyes were fixed on the worn photograph in his hand. Him in a Navy uniform, standing on a flight deck, squinting into the sun. His dream, once so vivid, now looked like someone else's life. Upstairs, 2 tiny voices echoed through the thin walls. "Daddy, Millie took my crayon!" "No, she gave it to me." The argument ended with the slam of a door and the patter of socked feet down the hallway. Marcus sighed, folded the photo, and slid it back into the drawer. Christina was gone. The love of his life, his rock, dead from childbirth complications that no one had seen coming. That night 5 years ago had torn through him like shrapnel. 1 minute they were choosing baby names. The next, nurses were whispering condolences as they placed 2 warm, wiggling bodies in his arms. Twin girls, Maya and Simone. He hadn't even wanted to live after that. But when Maya opened her eyes and looked at him like she already knew him, Marcus knew quitting wasn't an option. So he stayed. Stayed in the city, stayed in that cramped, drafty apartment, stayed working odd jobs, some dignified, some humiliating, to keep food on the table. A knock on the door snapped him out of his daze. He opened it to find old Mrs. Beckley from across the hall, holding a tray of mac and cheese. "I know it's not Sunday," she said, handing it over, "but I figured you could use a hot meal that didn't come from a microwave." "Thank you," he whispered, blinking hard. "Mrs. Beckley didn't ask questions. She never did. Just nodded and left, her floral scarf trailing behind her like a flag of quiet kindness. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep under mismatched blankets, Marcus sat on the couch with a legal pad and his calculator. The math didn't lie. Rent, daycare, groceries, formula, diapers, and now, preschool tuition. He stared at the acceptance letter for a neighborhood Montessori school. The twins had aced the entry evaluation. But the tuition was more than his monthly take-home pay from working security at a shipping yard. And that was assuming he didn't miss a shift, something that had already cost him 2 jobs when the girls had gotten sick. A part of him still burned to re-enlist. The Navy had called him twice, once offering a training position, another time for an admin post that came with full housing and benefits. But both would require relocation, deployment, separation. His best friend Darnell had said, "Man, you served. You did your time. Ain't nobody gonna judge you for taking care of your own. But you gotta think bigger than this shoebox of a life." Marcus had nodded then. But tonight, he felt the walls closing in. A creak from the girls' room pulled him back to the present. Simone, in her footy pajamas, wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, are you still dreaming about planes?" He smiled sadly. "Not tonight, baby." She climbed into his lap, placing a chubby hand over his heart. "You can dream here," she said, and just like that the tears came, silent, steady. He buried his face in her hair and wept, not just for what was lost, but for what might still be found. The next morning, Marcus packed away his military memorabilia, badges, medals, that uniform he used to press so crisp it could cut glass. He tucked them into an old Navy duffel and placed it in the back of the closet. His dream would wait, maybe forever. By mid-afternoon, he had made up his mind. He sold his motorcycle, his one indulgence, and paid the deposit for the girls' school. At the front office, the administrator, a pale, clipped woman with cat-eye glasses, raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Hayes, are you sure? We have other scholarship applicants. They earned that spot, he interrupted. Don't worry about me. Just teach them right. That night, over spaghetti and orange slices, Marcus made the announcement. Girls, he said, you're going to start school next week. A big school. Fancy books, a playground, real nap time, Maya shrieked. Simone danced on the couch. They didn't understand what it meant, not yet, but one day they would. That week, he picked up an extra night shift loading containers at the port. 12 hours straight, 6 days a week. His back ached. His knees throbbed, but every time he pictured the girls in their uniforms, little backpacks bouncing as they skipped into class, it felt worth it. Still, the judgment came. At the barbershop, on the block, even from family. You gave up the military? Benefits? A pension? For 2 girls who gonna grow up, marry some dude, and forget your name? His uncle spat those words at Thanksgiving like venom. Marcus didn't respond. He just watched his daughters build Lego cities in the corner, whispering strategies to protect their castles. Let the world call him a fool. He had never felt more certain. But fate, as always, wasn't done. 2 months into the school term, the shipping yard laid off half its staff. New automation technology. No warning, just a pink slip and a pat on the back. Marcus walked home that evening with a grocery bag of instant noodles, a can of beans, and a prayer. He didn't tell the girls. Not yet. He spent the next week scouring job boards, cleaning gutters, delivering groceries, even fixing a neighbor's leaky sink for cash. Anything to keep tuition paid and the lights on. Late one night, after putting the girls to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table writing a letter. It wasn't to anyone in particular, just to the man he used to be. I don't fly jets anymore, but every morning I watch 2 rockets take off in pigtails and light up sneakers. That's my mission now. My flight path changed, but I'm still airborne. He folded the letter and tucked it beside the photograph in the drawer. And so, Marcus Hayes, the man who once trained to navigate the skies, learned to navigate something far more unpredictable. Fatherhood, sacrifice, and the fragile hope that his girls would one day understand the size of the dream he gave up for theirs. They didn't yet know it, but the first chapter of their story had just been written, and one day the whole world would read it. The sound of a school bell cut through the cool morning air like a starting gun. Marcus stood at the wrought iron gate of St. Margaret's Academy, clutching the straps of Maya and Simone's brand new backpacks like they were parachutes. The girls were radiant in navy uniforms and yellow bows. They giggled nervously, both holding one of his calloused hands. You remember what I told you? He asked, crouching to their level. Be kind, be brave, and always raise our hands, Maya recited. Even if we already know the answer, Simone added with a serious nod. He smiled. Exactly. Now go learn something and make me proud. As they disappeared into the sea of students, Marcus exhaled slowly, as if releasing 5 years of holding his breath. He stayed long after the gate closed, staring at the red brick building like it held the answers to his own future, but the rent was due in 4 days. And the security guard gig he'd hustled to land after being laid off only paid half of what the dock work had. He'd started driving rideshare at night too, an old Chevy with no AC and a busted radio. It didn't matter. Every dollar counted. He sometimes nodded off at red lights, the exhaustion gnawing at his bones like termites. Still, he kept going. Because every evening when the twins ran out of that school, waving drawings and stickers and stories about what they learned, it made the blisters worth it. One Friday, he picked up a wealthy client in a luxury high-rise. The man stepped into Marcus's car, barely offering a glance. Do me a favor, the man barked, adjusting his AirPods. Don't talk! Marcus gritted his teeth. He'd had worse. Midway through the ride, the client received a call on speakerphone. "Just fired another one," the voice said. "These single dads think they're heroes." Sacrifice isn't a personality trait. Marcus blinked, feeling a strange sting behind his eyes. He wanted to pull over, ask the man to repeat himself, but he didn't. He just drove silently, gripping the wheel tighter. Back home, bills had started to pile again. Electric. Water. A letter from the school. Missed lunch payments. Marcus stared at it, then at the empty fridge. He knew what had to go. That night he sat on the edge of the bed, the twins already fast asleep, clutching their stuffed bears. He removed his prized possession from the closet, his old Navy bomber jacket. Faded, but still solid. He'd worn it through years of training, flight drills, and the first time he kissed Christina. He listed it online. It sold within 24 hours. At the post office, the clerk weighed the package and glanced at him. "Looks vintage." "Hard to let something like this go, huh?" Marcus smiled thinly. "Sometimes you gotta trade memories for momentum." The twins noticed the jacket was missing a few days later. "Where's your fly coat, Daddy?" Simone asked. Marcus hesitated. "I gave it to someone who needed it more." They didn't press further, but that night he overheard them whispering. "Do you think Daddy is sad?" "Maybe, but we're going to make him happy again." A week later, Simone drew a picture of Marcus with wings. "You're still flying," she told him. "Even if it's not in the sky." The following month, Marcus's world tilted again. St. Margaret's invited parents to a midterm progress meeting. Marcus, running on 2 hours of sleep and a gas station coffee, showed up in worn jeans and a button-up that still smelled faintly of bleach from his janitor shift. He sat in the back as other parents in tailored suits chatted about tutoring programs and piano recitals. When the teacher finally reached his daughter's folders, she paused. "Mr. Hayes, you should know your girls are exceptional." Marcus blinked. I mean, I try to help them at home, but I work a lot." "No, sir." "I mean gifted. Maya reads at a 3rd grade level. Simone is already solving math problems beyond her grade. Whatever you're doing, it's working." His mouth went dry. He hadn't expected praise. He hadn't expected anything. "Thank you," he managed. When he stepped outside, sunlight hit him like revelation. That night, he cooked an actual meal, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and turned off the TV. They sat at the tiny table in the center of the room. "You know," he said slowly, "when I was younger, I wanted to fly planes. Big ones. Go all over the world." "Why didn't you?" Maya asked. He hesitated. "I met your mom. Then I met you, and I realized some dreams are bigger than others." Simone tilted her head. "But maybe we can help you fly one day." He chuckled. "You're already doing that." But they weren't done, not even close. Unbeknownst to him, the twins had taken to sneaking into the local library after school while waiting for his rideshare shifts to end. A kind librarian, Mrs. Patel, had noticed them and started letting them use the computers. "Daddy's dream," Maya typed into the search bar. They found pictures of fighter jets, flight schools, scholarships. Profiles of pilots who looked like them. One even had a quote that stuck with them. "Every great pilot had someone who believed in their wings." They printed it, highlighted it, hung it on the wall of their bedroom. And something began to form. A plan, a pact between 2 little girls who decided that maybe, just maybe, they could give back the dream their father had shelved. They just didn't know how yet. But they would. Oh, they would. The heat that summer clung to everything: sheets, walls, breath. The small apartment Marcus rented above the corner laundromat had no air conditioning, and the box fan buzzed uselessly in the corner. Yet despite the swelter, the twins sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by notebooks, scissors, and a pile of old library flyers they had gathered secretly from Mrs. Patel's recycling bin. "We need a name," Maya said, tongue poking out as she concentrated on cutting out the letters from magazine pages. "For what?" Simone asked, pushing back her braids with the back of her wrist, her fingers smudged with glue. "For the plan. We can't just call it Help Daddy. That's too obvious." Simone squinted at the wall where they had taped up Marcus's photo, the one from when he graduated aviation training at 23. He was smiling, arms wide, standing beside a small propeller plane. Behind him, the sky was open and endless. "Skyback," Simone whispered. Maya paused. "Skyback?" "Yeah, like payback, but for the sky." They stared at each other, eyes widening. Then they grinned. Skyback. It began in whispers and scribbles, after-school huddles and nighttime promises. Meanwhile, life outside their plan didn't pause. Marcus worked longer shifts, now managing both overnight security at the community center and early morning janitorial hours at the downtown library. He rarely slept. Sometimes the girls woke to find a plate of peanut butter sandwiches on the table and a note that read, "Work called early. Proud of you. Always." By 7th grade, Maya and Simone were testing out of their classes. Their principal, Mrs. Rivera, requested a meeting. "You have extraordinary daughters," she said. "We've been discussing accelerated placement." "Possibly early college prep." Marcus blinked. "College? They're 12. "Yes. But they're capable of more." The idea terrified him. He hadn't saved nearly enough. His monthly budget barely covered rent, food, and school lunches. But he nodded anyway. "Whatever they need, I'll figure it out." That night, the twins overheard him coughing into a towel in the bathroom. When he came out, they were waiting with a cup of warm tea and Maya's latest art project, paper wings made from old math homework. "Your wings are still here," she said. "You just let us borrow them." He chuckled softly, rubbing his eyes. "Y'all really know how to break a man's heart in the best way." The next morning, Marcus took an extra shift. He scrubbed graffiti from brick walls until his knees ached and hands trembled. He didn't know the girls had taken another step. Simone had emailed a local STEM scholarship foundation, pretending to be their teacher. The email read, "I have 2 young black girls from a low-income family who are outperforming their grade level by years. Their father gave up his dream of becoming a pilot to raise them. Is there any support available for gifted students like them?" 3 days later, a woman named Carolyn Wright responded. "I'd like to meet them." Mrs. Wright ran an independent mentorship program for underrepresented students in science and technology. She met the twins at the library after school, where they had agreed to act like it was all just a random visit. Marcus was running late from work, so he didn't witness the first time his daughters stunned someone with their intelligence. Carolyn sat across from them at a round table, watching as Maya explained how they had built a weather tracker using broken kitchen timers, and Simone broke down the aerodynamics of a paper airplane. "You're not ordinary girls," she said, stunned. "No," Simone replied. "We're Skyback." When Marcus arrived, sweaty and apologizing, Carolyn stood and smiled. "Mr. Hayes, I'm not sure you realize what you have here." He frowned, confused. "These two? They're going to change the world." He looked at his daughters, and they looked back at him like they'd known it all along. Carolyn offered them slots in her mentorship camp, free of charge. Weekend field trips, science expos, computer labs, drone simulators. Marcus nearly declined. He didn't like handouts, but the twins grabbed his hands, pleading. Please, Daddy. Let us show you what we can become. He relented. That Saturday, they boarded a bus to the State University for their first lab tour. Marcus stood at the curb, watching the bus pull away. He hadn't felt that kind of ache since the day Christina died, the ache of letting go. But something began to shift. Carolyn called him 2 weeks later. Your daughters are on fire. Maya won the data modeling challenge. Simone built a prototype rotor using parts from a broken blender. Marcus laughed for the first time in what felt like months. They used to break the toaster just to see how it worked. They're not just smart, Carolyn said. They're driven. I've never seen anything like it. But with each triumph came more questions. Reporters from the local paper started sniffing around after the twins won a statewide science award. A photographer showed up at the library asking for Marcus. Simone pulled Maya aside. We can't let Daddy know, not yet. He'll think it's too much. Maya nodded. We keep it secret, just until we're ready. They kept it secret for nearly a year. Then one morning, Marcus walked into the grocery store and saw it. A poster taped to the window. 2 girls holding trophies, standing beside a smiling Carolyn Wright. Future of flight. These twins are redefining the skies. His breath caught. He stepped closer. The headline stung, but it wasn't the recognition. It was the name below the photo. Skyback Project. He stormed into the library, poster in hand. What is this? Maya and Simone froze. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, voice low but trembling. We wanted to surprise you, Simone said. Maya stepped forward. Because we're not doing this for us. We're doing it for you. Marcus sat heavily into the nearest chair. Silence swelled. Finally, he looked up. I gave up my dreams so y'all wouldn't have to. But I never meant for you to hide yours. Then, something unexpected happened. He smiled. A full, broken, beaming smile. You're flying now, he said. All I ever wanted was for you to fly. The girls cried. So did he. And outside, the library windows reflected 3 shadows. No longer a man and 2 daughters, but a crew. Ready for takeoff. By the time Maya and Simone were 15, the Skyback Project wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a movement. What started as 2 curious girls experimenting with cardboard wings had turned into a grassroots program mentoring other underprivileged kids in aviation and engineering basics. It met every Saturday in a borrowed high school gym with repurposed drones, scavenged laptops, and donated textbooks. But the more Skyback grew, the more cracks began to show. Funding was drying up. Carolyn Wright tried her best to keep the momentum going, applying for every grant she could, but rejections piled up. Some cited lack of an official nonprofit status. Others said aviation wasn't a funding priority. Meanwhile, the gym's principal warned them he'd need the space back for sports practices within a month. Marcus noticed the tension growing in his daughters, even if they tried to hide it behind fake smiles and everything's fine responses. He brought it up over dinner one night. 3 bowls of rice and beans lit by a flickering bulb in the corner. You girls ain't fooling me. Something's weighing on you. Simone set down her fork. It's just, the project's too big for us now. We need real money, real backing. And a real headquarters, Maya added. We're mentoring 12 kids now, Daddy. 12. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his chin. You ever think about going public with your story? He asked. Simone tensed. What do you mean? I mean really telling people what this is. Where it came from, why you started it. Maya looked down. We've tried. But people love flashy, not legacy. Marcus fell silent. He thought of the toolbox under his bed. the one he hadn't touched in 2 years. Thought of the years he scrubbed toilets and polished floors, building their dreams brick by invisible brick. What if he could add just one more? That night he logged onto Facebook using an old library computer. His profile picture was still from 2010, but he typed out a post anyway. I once dreamed of flying planes, gave it up when my daughters were born. They took that dream and gave it wings. If you've got a second, listen to what they're building. He included a link to the Skyback Project website. He almost didn't hit post, but he did. By morning, the post had 34 likes, then 342. By lunchtime, it had crossed 10,000 shares. Celebrities were commenting. Engineers from Boeing, educators from MIT. Maya and Simone came home from school to find their tiny apartment buzzing like a hive. Daddy, what did you do? Maya asked, breathless. Marcus shrugged, feigning innocence. Just told the truth. Their phones wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters called. Podcast hosts emailed. A documentary producer named Lorraine Hartley reached out, pitching a short feature for her Hidden Genius series. We want to film a piece on your family, she said, but not just the girls, him too. She meant Marcus. He didn't know what to say. They need to see what sacrifice looks like, Lorraine continued. They need to see the cost. Within days, a camera crew descended on their block. Lorraine's team filmed everything. Marcus mopping the library's lobby, Maya and Simone leading a workshop with local kids, their cramped living room covered in science fair posters and airfoil sketches. The final scene was filmed in the park, beneath the old oak tree where Marcus used to take the girls as toddlers. The director handed him a mic. What would you tell your younger self? She asked. He paused, looked at the lens, then spoke. I'd say, don't quit. Even when you're tired, even when nobody sees you. Because one day, someone will. Someone worth everything. The video went live on YouTube the following Friday. By Monday, it had racked up 3 million views. By Wednesday, donations flooded in. A GoFundMe campaign launched by a stranger raised $120,000 in 48 hours. Corporations offered internships. A retired Air Force general called and pledged his flight academy's resources. But the biggest shock came in a hand-addressed letter delivered by courier. Inside was a formal offer from the David J. Powell Foundation, a grant of $500,000 to establish a permanent Skyback Youth Center, provided Marcus agreed to help oversee the board. I'm just a janitor, he muttered, staring at the letter. You're more than that, Simone said, wrapping her arms around him. You're the blueprint. Construction on the new Skyback facility began 6 months later, on the same lot where Marcus's old aviation school once stood before it closed down due to lack of funding. There was poetry in that, but not everyone celebrated. Ms. Rayburn, a bitter city council member who'd once dismissed Skyback as a waste of taxpayer attention, launched an investigation into the group's financials. She accused them of manipulating public sympathy. It's all just another pity party wrapped in feel-good PR, she told a local news station. Maya and Simone were livid. We worked for everything, Maya snapped, slamming the remote. Marcus didn't get angry. He went into the garage and returned with the old toolbox. Let her talk, he said, placing it on the table. We'll build louder. The center opened quietly. No red carpet, no corporate backpatting. Just a chalkboard with their mission. We rise together. Kids lined up outside on the first day, 28 of them. Inside, Marcus led the first woodworking class, showing them how to build model planes from pine blocks. Anyone can hold a dream, he told them, hands steady despite age. But it's the ones who build it, who bleed a little for it. They're the ones who fly. The crowd clapped. The kids listened. and outside, beneath the rising sun, the name Skyback shimmered on a new sign. Legacy was no longer a future thing. It was now. And it was unstoppable. By the end of the first semester operating the Skyback Youth Center, the numbers were undeniable. Attendance had doubled. Local schools began referring students struggling in math or science. Every workshop filled, waiting lists formed. On Saturday mornings, the line wrapped around the block, filled with kids from every corner of the city. Some from foster care, some from shelters, all hungry for hope. But growth came with pressure. Simone, now in her junior year of mechanical engineering at Stanford, tried to juggle her studies with overseeing the program remotely. Maya, in her final year at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, split time between simulator training and video conferences. They were exhausted, but neither would admit it. One evening, Maya stared at her laptop screen, rubbing her temples. "We need someone on the ground, someone who understands what this means." "You mean like a manager?" Simone asked, sipping instant coffee. "No, not just anyone. Someone who's lived this." A silence stretched between them. "You're thinking about Dad," Simone finally said. Maya nodded. "He built this from nothing. He should be the one steering it now." But Marcus had his doubts. "I'm proud of y'all," he told them over Sunday dinner, sitting at their now modest but warm family kitchen. "But I don't have a fancy degree. I've never run no nonprofit." "You ran a whole life on faith and a mop bucket," Simone replied. "There's no syllabus for that." Maya leaned in. "This isn't about business, it's about heart." Marcus swallowed. "I ain't used to being seen like this, baby." "Well, get used to it," Maya smiled. "The world's finally catching up." 2 weeks later, the Skyback board voted unanimously to appoint Marcus Wright as executive director. The announcement didn't go unnoticed. National media picked up the story again. From janitor to visionary, the man behind the Skyback youth movement. Interviews poured in. Ellen DeGeneres invited the family to her show. Oprah tweeted a link to the documentary with the caption, "Faith, Love, and Legacy." "Watch this." But not everyone was cheering. A right-wing blog posted a hit piece questioning the credibility of the center's rapid growth, suggesting Marcus was a PR tool and the daughters were exploiting their father's backstory for fame. The piece went viral. Soon, online trolls flooded the center's social media with insults. "Professional sob story," "affirmative action project," "grift with a smile." Simone was furious. "We need to clap back," she said. "Expose every lie." "No," Marcus said, voice firm. "We keep building." "But Daddy," I said no. He stood from the table. "They want noise. We'll answer with results." Still, the attacks took a toll. Local officials who had once shaken hands now kept distance. One sponsor paused their donation pending clarity. Even Mrs. Hargrove, the principal who had once donated the gym space, declined to renew their partnership. Then came the twist they didn't expect. Congresswoman Regina Torres, a former aerospace engineer herself, visited the center unannounced on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Dressed simply, with sneakers and a braided bun, she arrived without press, carrying only a clipboard. "I've been following your work for months," she said, "and I've got a proposal." In the back office, she laid it out. A federal education initiative called Project Ascend, aimed at replicating the Skyback model in urban communities across the country. "You'll have full autonomy," she explained. "We need your story. But more than that, we need your system." Marcus stared at her, blinking. "You mean, like, government-funded?" "Yes. And you'd be its national director." Silence. Simone whispered, Holy... Maya grabbed her hand. But Marcus was still staring, not at Torres, but at the ghost of his younger self, the boy who wanted to fly, the man who gave it all up. The father who once scraped change from couch cushions for formula. And now, here was the government asking him to lead. He leaned forward, voice steady. We do this, it stays real, no suits, no gatekeeping. The door stays open, wide enough for the next dreamer. Torres nodded. That's exactly why we want you. 3 weeks later, Project Ascend was announced at a televised White House education summit. Maya and Simone stood beside their father, who delivered a speech that shook the room. 25 years ago, I gave up on my dream, Marcus said, his voice catching. But dreams don't die, they wait. Sometimes in daughters, sometimes in strangers' kids, and when they rise, they lift us all. The room erupted in applause. That night, social media exploded. Project Ascend trended #1 on Twitter. Celebrities reposted clips of Marcus's speech. Even the trolls fell silent, and perhaps the most powerful moment happened quietly. After the cameras left, Marcus walked back through the Skyback Center alone. In one corner, a girl no older than 10 was building a model plane, tongue sticking out as she balanced the wings. She looked up. Mr. Right? She asked. He smiled. Yeah, baby? Do you think I could be a real pilot one day? He knelt beside her. I don't think, he said. I know. And in that quiet moment, beneath the hum of ambition and the scent of sawdust and glue, legacy was no longer just a word. It was living, breathing, and building something greater than even Marcus Wright had ever dared to dream. The national spotlight brought opportunity, but it also brought scrutiny. After the Project Ascend announcement, Marcus Wright found himself navigating a world far removed from the quiet floors of Hillstone Library. Interviews, panels, policy meetings. He wore suits now, though never without a pair of old work boots in the car trunk. People shook his hand with reverence, but behind the smiles, he sensed the pressure. You okay, Papa? Maya asked during a late-night call from her dorm in Florida. Honestly, Marcus chuckled. Half the time, I'm just hoping nobody notices I've got sweat stains on my shirt. Simone, dialing in from her shared apartment in Palo Alto, added, You've been on CNN twice this month. I think you've earned your sweat. Still, the pace wore him down. What started as a passion project was now a national blueprint. A dozen cities requested Skyback centers. The Department of Education began sending officials to tour the flagship. And behind the scenes, politics started creeping in. During a quarterly stakeholder review in Washington, a polished man named Clark Renner, an education consultant tied to the administration, cornered Marcus. You're a compelling figure, Renner said. Authentic. We want to keep your face out front, but the back end, we'd like to bring in more experienced administrators. Marcus frowned. You mean replace my people? Let's call it optimization. He paused. And if I don't agree? Renner smiled too quickly. Then Project Ascend may struggle to secure next year's budget. Marcus sat quietly that night in his hotel room, the Lincoln Memorial visible beyond the window. He thought of the girls who came to the center each day with dirt on their knees and fire in their eyes. He thought of Maya, building wings, Simone, wiring futures. What would it mean to stay silent? What would it cost to speak? The next morning, at a press conference announcing a new Skyback pilot in Detroit, Marcus ditched the talking points. Standing before the crowd, he adjusted the mic and cleared his throat. I've been asked to smile more and speak less, to endorse ideas I didn't build. But let me say this plain. Skyback was born from sacrifice, not spreadsheets. If we're going to do this nationwide, we do it the right way, with the same hands that carried mop buckets, not just briefcases. The room fell silent. Some clapped. Others shifted uncomfortably. Renner stormed out. Later that night, Simone called him in a panic. "You know who you just pissed off, right?" "I know," Marcus replied. "But I ain't raising yes men. I'm raising truth." His stance made headlines again. The New York Times ran a Sunday feature titled, "The Janitor Who Dared to Lead." Donations surged. Volunteers tripled. But internally, pressure mounted. The Department of Education began delaying grant disbursements. One key partner pulled out of the Atlanta launch. Still, Marcus stood firm. And then, a twist no one saw coming. A viral video surfaced. Grainy, shaky phone footage from a town hall 2 years prior. In it, a state education board member slandered the Skyback program, calling it a charity masquerading as reform and a feel-good story for lazy kids. The footage spread like wildfire. Within days, activists organized rallies. Maya gave a speech at the University of Chicago, ending with, "We were never lazy, we were never less." And now, we're not alone. Simone wrote a blog post that broke 1 million shares. "My dad gave up his dream. We're building ours on his shoulders." Support flooded in from all over, teachers, parents, even celebrities. Tyler Perry offered to fund 3 new Skyback branches. Michelle Obama sent a handwritten note that read, "Marcus, your strength builds more than futures. It builds nations." But the real impact happened quietly. One afternoon, a boy named Jalen arrived at the original center, trembling. 12 years old, barely speaking above a whisper. "Mr. Wright," he said, "is it true your daughters fly planes?" Marcus smiled. "It sure is." Jalen bit his lip. "I want to be an astronaut." "Then let's get to work," Marcus said, pointing him toward the flight simulator. Later, watching the boy's fingers tremble over the joystick, Marcus felt something shift. Not in the world, in himself. All the noise, the politics, the threats, they were heavy, yes. But they were worth it for this. For the spark in a child's eyes. For the chance to protect a dream before it got crushed. That night he called Maya and Simone. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we stay grounded, not just in who we are, but who we're doing this for." "We're with you," Simone said. "Always," Maya echoed. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Marcus whispered, mostly to himself, "Then let's fly." The storm hadn't passed, but it no longer mattered. Marcus wasn't afraid of turbulence. He'd walked through worse and still come out standing. And this time he wasn't walking alone. For the first time in decades, Marcus found himself struggling to breathe, not from the grind, not from sacrifice, but from what the world had become around him. His daughters were soaring, Skyback was expanding, and the country had begun to believe in the power of a father's vow. Yet beneath the surface, he could feel a tremor, a fault line that hadn't yet cracked. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was reviewing blueprints for a new Skyback center in Richmond when Simone's number popped up on his phone. He answered with his usual smile. "Hey, superstar," but her voice was low, tight. "Papa, I need to tell you something before it goes public." He froze. "Talk to me." "There was a data breach." Someone hacked the Foundation's server, some emails, personal records, mine included. Marcus's heart dropped. "Are you safe?" "I'm okay," she said quickly. "But there's more. They leaked your personnel file from Hillstone. Someone posted it on a message board claiming you were a fraud, just a janitor pretending to be a reformer." Marcus sat down. The breath caught in his throat wasn't from fear, but familiarity. He had seen this coming. That evening, conservative pundits jumped on the story. One headline read, "Custodian con job, the truth behind the Skyback hype." Commentators questioned how a man without a college degree could run a national program. Social media buzzed with hot takes. Doubt, like rot, spread fast. The next morning, a protest erupted outside a planned Skyback site in Georgia. Marcus watched the footage in silence, protesters waving signs that read, "Real reform needs real credentials," and "Dreams don't clean toilets." He was scheduled to speak at a fundraiser in Chicago that night. His team advised him to cancel. Instead, he went. Under the glowing chandelier of a downtown hotel ballroom, he stepped onto the stage in front of philanthropists, politicians, and donors. No script. No PR polish. "I won't lie to you," he began. "I was a janitor. For 22 years I swept floors, cleaned bathrooms, scraped gum off desks, and I'm proud of it, because those years taught me something no textbook could. I learned the weight of silence, the power of listening, the dignity in labor." He paused, scanning the crowd. "But I also built something, not with degrees or titles, but with grit. I built futures. My daughters? One is a mechanical engineer, the other a commercial pilot, both born from sacrifice. And Skyback? That came from the same place." Applause didn't come immediately, but when it did, it started slow and rose like thunder. Later, backstage, Maya called him. "You burned that place down," she said, laughing through tears. He smiled. "Not burned, just lit it up." But the story didn't fade. Investigators traced the leak to a rival education nonprofit, one that had recently lost a federal contract to Skyback. The executive director, Thomas Calder, was subpoenaed for cyber interference. The twist? Calder had once applied for a consulting role at Skyback. Marcus had personally rejected his application, citing lack of alignment with core values. When reporters asked Marcus for a statement, he kept it simple. "We build bridges, not sink ships. But if someone tries to burn ours down, we'll rise from the ashes." Despite the chaos, the foundation's numbers soared. Enrollment tripled. Volunteers came from as far as Alaska. Simone and Maya began developing a curriculum branch called Skyback STEM, aimed at expanding science programs in underfunded schools. But behind all the headlines, Marcus noticed something deeper happening. One day, he visited the original Skyback Center, walking the halls alone. A young boy tugged his sleeve. "Mr. Wright," he whispered, "they said you used to mop these floors." "Is that true?" Marcus nodded. "Sure is." The boy smiled. "My dad mops floors too." "Does that mean I can build something big one day?" Marcus crouched, meeting his eyes. "You already are." That night, over dinner with Maya and Simone, he shared the moment. "You know," he said, "I used to dream of flying jets. But I think watching y'all, building this is better." Simone leaned in. "Papa, you gave up your dream and made ours possible." Maya added, "Now the world sees you, really sees you. That janitor story they thought would break us. It made us unstoppable." Marcus looked at his daughters, their eyes filled with fire, and saw reflections of everything he had fought for. They were no longer just daughters. They were legacy. They were proof. And though the battle wasn't over, he finally understood. The internet might break for a day, but what his family built would last far longer. They didn't just break the internet. They rewrote the narrative. The evening was warm, the kind of dusk that wrapped the city in a golden hush. Marcus stood just outside the auditorium of Lincoln High, the place where it all started, where he'd once been just the janitor nobody looked twice at. But tonight, things were different. Inside, rows of folding chairs lined the gymnasium floor. A large banner stretched across the back wall. Skyback Scholars, National Conference. At the center of it, in bold print, read, "Honoring the legacy of Marcus Wright." He chuckled softly to himself, shaking his head. "I used to clean gum off that bleacher," he whispered, pointing toward the far wall. Maya and Simone stood behind him, radiant in tailored suits. Simone nudged him forward. "They're waiting, Papa." He hesitated. "Y'all sure this ain't too much?" Maya smiled. "You spent 25 years giving up your dream for us. It's time the world knows what that really means." When he stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. Students, parents, donors, teachers, all on their feet. Marcus approached the podium, gripping its edge, letting the noise wash over him. Then he raised his hand. Silence followed like a wave. "I never asked for a spotlight," he said, "and I sure didn't think I'd end up in one. But if my story can help just one kid out there, one janitor, one single parent, one kid who thinks they're too far behind to ever catch up, then I'll stand in this light as long as it takes." He took a breath, voice steady but deep with emotion. "I cleaned schools. I sold my tools. I slept on floors. Not because I was extraordinary, but because love is stubborn. And sometimes the biggest dreams ain't ours. They belong to the ones we raise." In the front row, a young girl wiped her eyes. Behind her, a group of students held up signs that read, "We are Skyback." "But here's what I've learned," Marcus continued. "Dreams don't die. They transform. Mine, it became my daughter's. And through them, it became this. You." Suddenly, Simone stepped up beside him with a grin. "We have a surprise." A screen lowered behind them, and the lights dimmed. A documentary reel began to play, showing grainy footage of Marcus mopping school floors, building wooden desks in the dark, carrying Maya and Simone on his shoulders. Then came the new images. Simone in a lab coat beside aircraft engines, Maya inside a flight simulator, the Skyback Center ribbon cutting, community workshops, national headlines, and finally, Marcus hugging a boy with a broom tucked under one arm. The last frame was a quote over his silhouette. "Every child is a runway. Clear the path and they will fly." The lights came back. The room was silent, reverent. Then came the applause. Louder than before. After the event, outside under the stars, Marcus stood alone, watching students laugh and pose for pictures. A young man approached him. "Mr. Wright," Marcus turned. "My name's Elijah. I used to skip class, hated school, then I heard your story. I started sweeping my grandma's porch every day, just thinking about you. I'm graduating this year, first in my family." Marcus swallowed the lump in his throat. "You're gonna do great things, Elijah." The young man nodded. "I already did. I applied to Skyback. And I got in." Later that night, back at the house Maya and Simone had bought him, "Wright Haven," the plaque read. Marcus sat on the porch. A small wooden plane rested in his hand, carved long ago by Maya from leftover cedar. Simone brought him a mug of tea. "The internet broke when the story aired again tonight, trending in 15 countries. He chuckled. "Imagine that. A janitor trending worldwide." "No," Maya said, joining them. "A father, a builder, a visionary." The three of them sat in silence as a plane soared overhead, its lights blinking red in the dark. Marcus tilted his head toward it, eyes glinting. "That one's Maya." "No," Maya teased. "I'm home tonight. That's probably Simone's prototype gliding through the clouds." He smiled. "Doesn't matter. Y'all both fly now." As the sky deepened, the family toasted one last time that night. To dreams. to sacrifice, to the vow. And to you, reading or watching this now, if you've ever questioned whether your effort matters, whether your love is enough, whether your story is worth telling, let this be your answer. It does. It is, and it always will be. If you've made it this far, we thank you for joining the journey. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Because stories like this don't just inspire, they remind us that the smallest lives can leave the biggest legacies. We'll see you in the next one.